Today I will be talking about student visa on their own purely because it's a very burning topic at this moment of time, especially when the borders are reopened and fully vaccinated students are allowed to come in, and moreover department and government is getting more concessions for students, encouraging students to come back to Australia, specifically abolishing restrictions on work rights, at least until April 2022 with a further review. And from my practical experience, it may be a little bit possibly easier in the sense of assessment for student visa to get the student visa now. And the processing time for student visas are very, very quick at this moment of time. Let's start with a bit of recapping what can be possibly included in the student visa, and I will be able to briefly overview what sort of levels of qualification may fit specific cases. So please feel free to write down your questions if you have any while I'm talking, and I will attend any questions you may have during my live. So, student visa. You can possibly use student visa firstly to send kids to study in Australia at school. That's still student visa, but for school education. In this case, one parent may be considered as a guardian to come with the child and accompany the child. This type of visa can be granted for 3 years originally, so for student who is school age and for parent. Parent can accompany student for up to until the age of 18. So when student will be turning 18, the guardian visa will not be possible anymore. In terms of costs, we will be sharing further guide how to assess whether you can afford student visa. So I will not be discussing any particular numbers at this moment of time because when you're having a written numbers, it's practical and easier to digest. So for schooling, not a problem. The child can come along or come along with one parent. And because the children doesn't have any migration case, it's kind of easier for genuine temporary entrant assessment. In terms of next stage, it's going to be vocational study, colleges, TAFEs, then it can be universities, bachelor degree, master degree, and then it's going to be potential with research, master degree by research or PhDs. So these are a variety of student visas. When we're talking about student visa, particularly for vocational study and further studies, we need to focus on genuine temporary entrant criteria. If we're talking about that, it is a variety of factors that the department will consider. So student background, why you need that particular course, why Australia, whether you've been to Australia, any questions associated with potential migration, and of course country of your passport. So it's sometimes beneficial to have one passport, and sometimes your passport may be absolutely devastating in terms of assessment level. There's nothing you can do about it. A lot of students potentially were asking me about ELICA's course, and studying English as a first step, or combining English with any sort of other courses. Give you my opinion on that. So ELICA's course is not as easy to get the visa through that course alone. The reason for that is because studying in Australia, studying English in English-speaking countries is very appealing, of course, but the pricing is pretty high. And if you are applying for ELICA's course alone, from the high-risk country, it may be also high risk of refusal. The reason for that is the department is assessing how it's going to be economically beneficial for you to invest that type of money to come to Australia and study English. And sometimes it's going to be a problem to justify why can't you just do the same, say online, or do the same in your home country. Also depends on your particular occupation. So what sort of professional are you? Whether you really need English, advanced English for your career, or it's absolutely unnecessary. I'll give you an example. If you are a tradie who works in your trade occupation in the home country and there is no English involved, and all of a sudden you would like to come over on a student visa to study only English language, that's going to be a potential problem, because the department may see no value of you investing that type of money and potential, obviously, migration case. In terms of duration for ELICA's course, my particular preference as a professional, I've done several of those, obviously, throughout my career on its own. So I would recommend no more than 6 months. The reason for that is if you're taking your ELICA's course longer, then again, it is a potential risk for the department to look at that from the migration perspective, because ELICA's course is a relatively budget course. And yes, you will have full-on workload in terms of attending the course, but at the same time, you have part-time work rights. Well, at this moment, it is abolished as full-time, but in the normal situation, you had part-time work rights, and the department may be thinking about that as a migration opportunity to come and start working and start searching for the sponsor. Of course, there are a lot of people who come in on student visa end up with one or another migration option, but at the application stage for student visa, you will have to consider all the factors to justify that you will be coming back, and that particular course or program will benefit your case in terms of career change or obviously advancement of your career with better salary, etc., etc. So really, there is no one program fits everybody. So you need to have a look at your case, have a look at your background, whether you come in with a family or not, and then justify it all with the documents. One of the good scenarios when you're trying to justify your English, the need to go and study only English in an English-speaking country, maybe to try learning English in your country and perform any sort of English test, for example, IELTS, show the results maybe 1 or 2 times, and then prove it all with documents that it's hard for you to achieve certain level. And then you will be able to basically justify why you need to come to English-speaking country and why can't you just do it in your country. In terms of potential with vocational study or university study, especially impacting skilled migrants now, because a lot of states at this moment of time are requiring very high English language for skilled migrants from offshore, and it's not a lot of opportunities from offshore. So better off coming onshore on one or another visa, and then obviously considering the variety of scenarios, including the careful consideration of the location where you're going, and obviously the level of study, what you're going to be studying. So if we're talking about big difference between vocational study and university, it is price, and then it is a potential of getting graduate visa, especially for bachelor degree and above. You need to be careful and choose master degree that also satisfy the criteria for graduate visa. For vocational study education, there are limited occupation where you will be able to get graduate visa, and you cannot extend graduate visa while completing vocational study, even in regional Australia. So basically comparing those two, for vocational course, it's going to be budget, and you can combine it with English language course if needed, though I would strongly recommend to sit IELTS at any level to show the department that you've been studying and be preparing yourself towards study in Australia. And yes, you have lower IELTS, but you get in the course to compensate that. Otherwise, it looks very bare, and obviously the department may question why you didn't have any attempt to study English at home before you enroll yourself. In this sense, vocational study can be relatively budget and give you, say, 2.5 years of overall program to come to Australia. But in the majority of scenarios, you will not be eligible for graduate visa. Then you need to consider what sort of scenarios you will be doing while you're on student visa. For example, whether you will be searching for employer, whether you will be searching for partner, or whether you will be trying for skilled visa. And all these questions needs to be carefully planned, as I said, because when you're in Australia, say in the location where it is not possible for you to achieve any sort of visa, it's going to be very frustrating and you will be losing your money. In terms of securing longer graduate visa, now there is an option if you're studying bachelor degree and above, specifically in regional areas, because you will be able to get additional points when you live and study in the regional areas, plus the potential of opportunity to extend your graduate visa if you continue to reside in regional areas. So that is important to consider. And obviously, while you will be paying for the course somewhere, say in Sydney, with no extra benefits, regional study may potentially bring you these benefits. But again, you need to consider specific location and basically your career, or maybe if you will be trying to find some work there, because studying on its own will not bring you no guarantee for permanent residency. So no course will 100% guarantee that you will get permanent residency at the end. In the majority of scenarios, apart from studying, you will have to get local work experience in the occupation associated with your study. And then, the good research comes in play, because it depends on the regional areas and what sort of areas you will be considering going to for study, and what sort of opportunities in this location can be either in your current occupation or in the occupation you're choosing for future, to make sure that you actually will be able to build your career there. For those people who are skilled and kind of considering student visa as an option at this moment of time, you can certainly consider master degree and above, because that's a progression of your qualification, especially if you already have bachelor degree. Secondly, it will bring you to graduate visa with the opportunity to obtain international work experience anyway, regardless of your plans. So you will be able to have more time. Then basically you will have to consider whether you need any points if you considering state sponsorship option. For those who are losing points at age or end, don't mind looking at research and potential case for global talent visa. At this moment of time, there are options for PhD degrees, which will extend age limit to 55 for global talent, and gives you an opportunity to come to Australia, do research and work towards your case for global talent, as an example, especially if you're turning 42, 43, so it's going to be very risky to come on some sort of short course and pray that you're going to get any sponsor or anything else. In terms of starting the process for student visa enrollment and everything, my recommendation, especially for non-research sector, is to start at least 4 months prior the start of your study date. If you're going to be aiming for any research degree, for example, master by research or PhD, the consideration for these applications are usually not set through the year, but the process is a bit different. You're getting your expression of interest and your thesis, basically summary, what are you going to research, and plan your supervisor through the university, and then you lodge the application, and consideration may take 3 to 6 months. So it's actually a long process. If we're talking about English language programs on their own, they are starting every Monday, so that's not a problem to enroll and potentially apply for the visa. If you are talking about vocational studies, it heavily depends on the program. Usually they start every semester, especially programs like leadership, etc., marketing, something like this, light programs, I would say. Any other potential programs like cookery or any trades occupation, it depends. So you need to research what sort of program you need and then the start date. In terms of bachelor master, the usual start dates will be either February or July, September, so twice a year. Again, if you would aim for study and start date, you need to start at least 4 months prior. That's my recommendation. In terms of enrolling into packaged course, for example, you don't have any English or your English is low, it's not enough to directly apply. It again depends on the program. If you're talking about any medical programs, for example, dentistry or midwifery or registered nursing programs, their absolute minimum for enrollment can be IELTS 7 academic, and not every single university may be able to accept students with lower English language, so the entry requirements pretty high. Normal requirements for vocational study is 4.5 academic IELTS. For universities, it starts roughly from 6.5 onwards. So again, it depends on the program, but my recommendation will be to consider sitting IELTS when you're aiming for student visa, academic module, and then show the results to the college in order to see if they can add to your English course package, and then plan the whole program in combination with English course and then main program of study. So it really depends on your choice, obviously, and the budget, because at this moment of time, it's a pretty good climate. The universities and colleges offering good discounts for the whole duration of your program. For universities, we were experiencing 25% discount for the whole program, which is a significant amount of money, depending on the university. Again, for colleges, they are very competitive, so you may expect good prices too. And obviously, you need to consider all the requirements for financial component of student visa. So regardless where you're going to be staying in Australia, when you come to Australia, you still need to show the minimum living expenses, cover tuition fee, and obviously pay for health insurance. Interestingly enough, when I was talking about student visa several times, I realized that not a lot of people, especially who would like to come as a family unit, just don't know the pricing for health insurance. If you're a couple without kids, that's pretty much affordable. Talking about $500 a year per person, so it's not that bad. But if you are a couple with child or children, then the price will go up significantly and can be around $5,000 a year for family cover. So that sort of pricing you will have to calculate depending on the duration of your program and duration of your stay in Australia, which will link to a letter of offer from the university. And then all these costs for health insurance you will have to pay before you lodge your visa application. So it's also can be a surprise for people who don't know. Then the process can be the following. Once you get the enrollment and accept the offer, which may usually take from weeks to months, depending on the university. The bigger is the university, the longer is the wait. If we're talking about small colleges, it's obviously a quicker turnaround. Then you will have to lodge your student visa application with all the documents. Please bear in mind that confirmation of enrollment, it's not, again, the guarantee that your student visa will be granted, in fact. So you need to make sure that you explain everything and provide sufficient documents for your student visa application. When we're talking about further processing, so that moment you apply, you will have to go through medicals and sometimes, depending on the country, for biometrics. fingerprints. After that's done, your student visa application will be queued as decision ready, and then the officer will be assessing your case. Please bear in mind that a couple of scenarios may happen through the assessment. You may receive a phone call from the embassy, and basically they will be questioning you as per genuine temporary entrant criteria. So my advice is the better you prepare your statement, the chances are you're not going to be interviewed, because of course, even if you're prepared and feel confident, it's still stressful moment for everyone to talk with a migration officer, and obviously with the stress like to advance this career or go somewhere else. You may expect a call from embassy directly to your employer in order to get the recent employer, in order to confirm that you are in that particular occupation, and depending on your case, it may be a further question about your tasks and duties and etc. So be prepared, and obviously ask employer that it may happen, tell employer that it may happen, and you need to provide them with further guidelines to make sure everybody is comfortable with that. So a student visa, as I said, at this moment of time, I've seen a lot of people who would like to come over as students in regards to just the quicker way to enter the country and then stay in Australia for temporary amount of time, and then consider further steps depending on the strategy. I strongly recommend, because you're going to be spending fair bit of money on your student visa regardless of the course. Even vocational study will cost you, and obviously stay in Australia will cost you. My best advice is to get detailed assessment and get your migration strategic plan in order for you to understand what sort of location can be preferable for you, specifically for your occupation, and how quickly you can convert student visa to any other visa depending on your particular situation. So as you can see, it's not black and white, and particularly student visa, because of the genuine temporary entrant assessment criteria, I would never say that, there is 100% guarantee. I can't do it by law. But in talking about the assessment, it's always 50-50. If somebody obtains student visa and you have similar case, it's not necessarily you'll get the same outcome. So every single case will be assessed on its merits, obviously on your particular situation. So think carefully, because you're going to be investing your time and your money into student visa program, and I believe you would expect this time work for you, work for your career, or work for your future steps on migration journey. So finishing my life, I would like to get engaged with you, and if you would like me to answer a particular question or scenario, I will be reading and answering right very now. So if you have any questions, please post, and I will give you some generic, at least, guidelines. So let's start. Is it possible to convert visitor visa to student visa? How much it costs? Yes, it is possible, and with the latest news that government will be allowing visitors to enter Australia from the 21st of February. It's a good idea to think about this strategy. It is going to be possible if your visitor visa is granted and visitor visa has no further stay condition. So my strategy around student visa, offshore, onshore, or student visa, visitor visa, give you just my opinion. If you're coming from a high-risk country, the best idea possibly to try and justify your coming and obviously minimize your risks may be to consider visitor visa first, in order to show that you would like to go and explore Australia, and you may even fit in some small English course while you're visiting Australia, because it's permitted and there is no migration outcome on the visitor visa. In this sense, if the visitor visa is granted with restriction, with condition no further stay, then you will not be able to convert visitor visa to student visa while in Australia. But you still have an opportunity to come to Australia, show that you will be complying with all the conditions, visit, have a look, maybe come to universities of your choice, come there in person, and then go offshore and launch your student visa, justifying that yes, you've been to Australia, yes, you're satisfied with all the conditions, you managed to have a look with your own eyes, and you would like to proceed with student visa. That is logical. If your visitor visa is granted without any restrictions, then you can potentially come on visitor visa and do absolutely the same, but then lodge your student visa from Australia, obviously getting ready with all your finances. In this case, you will get the bridging visa and you will be able to stay in Australia and wait for student visa decision. Just in case, if your visitor visa will not be considered positively, depending obviously on the decision and what was the reason for rejection, after that, it's unlikely that student visa from offshore will be granted. But I would recommend potentially to use visitor visa first, because in case of rejection, you're not going to lose a lot of money. And then if you get rejection on student visa, for example, then it's kind of not logical to use visitor visa after student visa rejection, if it does make sense to you. So visitor visa now will be possible for, again, fully vaccinated, the same as student visa for fully vaccinated. Therefore, you may consider visitor visa first, and then looking at the outcome later on, considering student visa from onshore. How long does it take to apply for bridging visa from subclass 500? So if you're going to be applying from Australia, the bridging visa is automatically granted on application. Therefore, you don't need to apply separately for bridging visa. And then your bridging visa will be active once, say, your visitor visa expires. So it is possible to make it that way and apply for student visa on the last week being on your visitor visa, as an example. Right, let's have a further look. Is Russia considered high-risk country at this moment? Kind of. The reason for that is there are more higher risk countries, for example, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, etc. Russia is kind of in the middle, though it's not necessarily the situation where Russia or application from Russia will be 100% rejected. We just got the visa for vocational study for a single lady who had a bachelor degree from Russia. So not a problem, I would say, to get the visa from Russia, but depending on the case, because depending on what you are choosing to study and what's going to be your justification. So that is possible at this moment of time. Next question. Universities require the equivalent of Australian bachelor degree. Is that necessarily to have an assessment of VETSS, or it's enough just to translate diploma? You don't need any assessment. So if you have a bachelor degree or a specialist degree, if we're talking about Russia again, in this case, bachelor or specialist degree will be leveled at a bachelor degree level in Australia. So you don't need to get any assessment of your diploma. Usually for enrollment, it's going to be obviously copies of your diplomas with translation, and then it's going to be sufficient for universities and for department to consider your level of qualification. All right, one more question. I have been to Australia before. Based on my experience, Filipinos are not allowed to change visa while in Australia if we are tourists. We are advised right away that changing status is not allowed. We need to return here to apply for student visa. It's still the same ruling for us Filipinos. Let's discuss. First of all, my first advice for you to understand, I don't know who gave you this advice, but to understand your particular situation, is just to have a look back to your visitor visa where you got it, on the grant letter to see what sort of condition you had on this visitor visa at the time. As I mentioned before, if your visitor visa had or has a condition 8503, it's called no further stay. In this case, you will not be permitted to convert it to student visa. If your visitor visa has no restrictions and no conditions restricting you to apply for any further visas, you can potentially. So there is no specific ruling for country to go back home if you have no restriction on the visitor visa. It is possible, but just be mindful what sort of visitor visa. When we're talking about visitor visa, I'm talking about visitor visa tourist stream, because you may have, depending on how you applied and whether you have relatives in Australia, there is another visitor visa sponsored stream. In this particular sponsored stream, you will not be able to convert it into student visa. So it depends on what sort of visa you applied, what sort of visa you get, what sort of condition on your visa you had at the time. So you can check it all out and understand what was your right at the time, and hence you may potentially lodge another visitor visa application if you'd like to come to Australia and consider student visa from Australia. So another question, lady 41 years of age, single from Russia, diploma in medicine and master of veterinary, to study English at academic level, what's the best option? If it's medical degree, if she's a doctor and then master in veterinary science, it really depends what's her strategy after that, because talking about 41, if she's going to be enrolling into, say, master degree for 2 years in order to then potentially consider graduate visa, at time she will be finishing, she's going to be already 43. And if you remember, if we're talking about overall concept, for example, and considering any skilled visa option, the limitation will be 44 inclusive. So it's not a lot of time for her left in order to do something about it. Then if she's a registered nurse, it's a different story. She may consider registered nursery here. But it depends, again, what sort of, if you're talking about her coming and studying English only, I may consider a bit of risks there because she's aged. And again, on English alone, it may be a problem. With a good justification, especially for medical professionals, it may be potentially okay to consider English only in order to advance themselves. But then, as I said before, I would recommend to take some classes, English classes in the home country, and then justify that it's not working because, for example, at her location, teachers are not English speaking and it's getting slow or nowhere. So it is an opportunity for you to think really creatively what sort of evidence you may provide in order to justify why she needs English only with such a variety of qualifications. Therefore, if you have any more questions, please feel free to post here, because I will be finishing in an absence of questions. But summing up, student visa now is a pretty much fast way to come to Australia. But just be mindful what sort of program are you going to be choosing, because that steps will affect your potential next option while you're in Australia. And you just need to be careful what you're going to be investing in to get the maximum outcome from your investment, and obviously advance your career and not only enjoy your time in Australia, but make the most out of it in terms of varieties of further options. So for those who don't know, I just want to inform you that we are creating migration strategic advice and plans for individuals who would like to come to Australia, who would like to check their options, etc. So please feel free to reach me if you would like to talk about your cases in specific. But alternatively, for everybody who would like to study in Australia, I would say at this moment of time, it's pretty good opportunities in terms of discounts, faster processing, and easement on the work rights. So it's a good climate to consider coming to Australia on student visa, and it is totally your choice. And me as a professional, I need to make sure that you make your selection carefully and you understand all the risks and good factors on the student visa. So thank you very much, guys, who are participating on my live today. Very appreciate that, and thank you for your questions. I'll see you very soon, and enjoy your afternoon.